questions that govern AI ethics are also the oldest questions in the world that have been part of the major religions.
Businesses we run. And then we have these intangible questions that AI affects, like what does it mean to be human? All of a sudden, a whole new question, right? Especially in theological circles. What is the dignity of the human person? What is the response? I wish I heard a lot
And so there's certainly space, I think, for all of these disciplines, science, technology, and religion, to overlap as we think about how to build these technologies and how we think about
what it means to be human. And that can be threatening when something we identified as being purely human is done well by machine, especially if it's done even better by machine than humans have been able to.
Artificial intelligence is the analysis of data and its functional implementation in ways that look like our own analysis, using software and sophisticated hardware to answer questions, to find truth based on evidence, and to do other kinds of functions that are important to us as humans, to communicate better, to better care for each other through better healing, through substitutions for disabilities, for discovery of knowledge. All of these things come from a combination of data pools, computing power, and software that brings those together in the pursuit of knowledge.
The term artificial intelligence came about, in the 1950s with a certain worldview, and it doesn't really. The understanding of intelligence then doesn't really fit with what we understand now.
In a science fiction sense, artificial intelligence is a machine or a mathematical model that has the capacity to reason in a human-like way. In my practice as a scientist, what I view as artificial intelligence is truly just mathematical algorithms that have been trained on data to perform specific tasks. So I think there's a distinction often between the pop science understanding of what artificial intelligence is, which is this broader vision of human-like reasoning in non-human things, particularly robotic-like things. And then, in practice, it's often right now algorithms behaving based on observations they've made from data they've seen.
I mean, psychologically, intelligence is a comparative measure. We're not talking about it as a specific quality people have. It's just a way of understanding different aspects of a person and how they think. I mean, I think what's probably a little bit closer to what we're trying to get there is with rationality, and not kind of just a ability to think rationally. One of the things we understand from neuroscience is that when we see a person who's acting what we consider irrational, it's usually a dysfunction of the emotion processing systems within the brain, the limbic structures. And so there's an aspect of rationality where it's not just, what we're thinking about, how we're thinking about it, but kind of what we're choosing to think about.
Artificial intelligence for me is when computers operate in the world in human roles, right? That doesn't necessarily mean the process is the same. I would consider, a chess playing machine to be a form of AI. It does a thing human beings do. Right? It operates in the world according to a kind of human role, chess playing. It does not play chess the way any human being plays chess. Full stop, where we might never even create an AI that can play chess the way human beings play chess.
I think the impetus is more about kind of the modeling, the understanding, and then building something that can do that, whether it's all of rationality and what would be considered like artificial general intelligence, or just specific aspects that seem important to that process. And so I kind of simplest definition of AI would be like a social historical endeavor to model rationality.
For me, like when we look at AI, we're looking at things that take on human roles or, other kind of thinking roles. But, you go everywhere from like a cockroach. Cockroaches have some version of thinking. I don't know what it might be. Mostly, if you turn on a light and everything scatters, is that thought? Maybe, but only in a very kind of minuscule way. So, they go from these roles of operating in the world to very sophisticated roles of operating in the world. And maybe the day will come when there are AIs that can operate in this wide variety of interesting and expansive roles. Maybe. In the meantime, we're gonna have to think about, if that becomes the case, what we want them to look like, right? I mean, it goes back to that value alignment problem. By the time a machine can navigate rooms, can talk to you about navigating rooms, can understand the social dimensions of all the room navigation across time and human relationships, what are its values going to be?
Hi, thanks for joining us. I'm Dan Forbush. I belong to the UU congregation of Saratoga Springs in upstate New York. I'm also on the editorial team of AI and Faith. Our purpose is to bring the wisdom of the great religions to the AI conversation, which is now suddenly everywhere. Because UUs prize science and shun dogma, we tend to be better equipped than most faith communities to look objectively at the promise of AI and at its threats.
Hi, I'm Ron Roth, a member of Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Boca Raton, Florida. And I also work with Dan on the editorial board of AI and Faith. Artificial intelligence reflects who we are as people, our desires, our goals, and our accomplishments, but that also includes our failures and biases. Generative AI products like Midjourney for graphic art, ChatGPT for text, and Ava for music are the result of AI researchers compiling hundreds of billions of data points on what we've said and done, and giving it to an unsupervised generative adversarial network to train itself. The models they generate, like GPT-4 and soon to be GPT-5, are simply prediction tools to give us more of what we want, which end up parroting back to ourselves new iterations of ideas we've already had. The results can be surprising, funny, inspiring, and at times deeply disturbing. As the saying goes, garbage in, garbage out. The consequences are often unintentional. Dehumanization, injustice, job loss. Trouble comes when, out of mistrust for our fellow human beings, or just laziness, we abdicate to a machine our free will decisions, our capacity for creativity, and making statements of truth. That's the purpose of what philosopher René Descartes called res cogitans, thinking things. We are the thing that thinks. And the challenge to each and every one of us is to remember that whenever we use AI-powered products. If you like the social media world AI has generated, then by all means, lay back and enjoy the show. But if you want a better world, we have to evolve a kind of respectful, ethical, and principled partnership between AI and the human. And that begins with joining the conversation. That conversation is what makes me AI excited.
We have a tendency to regard technology as being somehow outside the realm of the human spirit. But our tools and machines are, of course, very much a part of who we are. And so, working with AI and faith, we've established this platform and embarked on a series of monthly conversations with experts. And now we're inviting UU congregations around the world to circle Sunday, October 22nd, as a day for reflecting on the implications of AI. We've picked this day because it coincides closely with the Ayudha Puja, the festival in which Hindus have been honoring their tools and machines for 1,000 years.
The questions that govern AI ethics are also the oldest questions in the world that have been part of the major religions for 4 millennia at least. These are questions of human dignity, human agency, the purpose and meaning of life, the existence of truth, and other foundational questions that the major religions have been addressing for a long time. So we believe, some of the best tested, oldest foundations for living in the world for these very modern questions that AI is producing.
On the one hand, we're looking at kind of practical and, sort of tangible impacts of what it means to be, human, and how to operate in the world, and what kind of economies we want and what kind of businesses we want. And then we have these intangible questions that AI affects, like, what does it mean to be human? All of a sudden, a whole new question, right? Especially in theological circles. What is the dignity of the human person? What is the I wish I heard a lot more about what is the responsibility of the human person.
It's becoming increasingly obvious that the dividing line between AI technology and spiritual conversations is getting blurry, because as we endow these AI agents with more human-like qualities, we are, whether or not they are human-like, we are beginning to treat them as such and respond to them as such. And so there's certainly space, I think, for all of these disciplines, science, technology, and religion, to overlap as we think about how to build these technologies and how we think about as a society to respond to them.
So there's a lot of implications with AI advance. Socially, morally, spiritually. It affects how we think about ourselves, the kind of work we do, what we value. It can raise questions about how much we value automation and efficiency in relation to what human costs. As it becomes more human-like, it can make us reflect on what it means to be human. And that can be threatening when something we identified as being purely human is done well by machine, especially if it's done even better by machine than humans have been able to do before.
It was UCLA researcher Jacques Vidal who coined the term brain-computer interface. He did it in a paper published exactly 50 years ago, starting off by briefly describing the use of electroencephalography to measure electrical signals in the brain and mused where the technology might go in the future. He said, can these observable electrical brain signals be put to work as carriers of information in man-computer communication, or for the purpose of controlling such external apparatus as prosthetic devices or spaceships? Indeed, they can, as 50 years of intensive R&D has shown. Every day, we see new reports of the remarkable progress that's being made in connecting human brains with computers.
For example, DARPA, the military's research agency, is funding major programs to develop BCIs to help pilots. So we're seeing stories like this. And we're seeing the arrival of so-called smart helmets like Kernel Flow. Kernel Flow is an fMRI scanner that's been miniaturized so you can wear it on your head. It shoots laser beams into your brain to measure how various groupings of neurons are oxygenating blood, which turns out to be a great way for AI algorithms to discern what you're thinking and feeling. Because a single Kernel Flow helmet currently costs $50,000, only institutional researchers can afford to buy these things. but the company aims to come out with an affordable consumer model next year. We have no way to know what features this new model will offer, but the possibilities over the long term are endless. Maybe kernel flow will start out by enabling us to type without using our fingers. We'll just think what we want to say and the words will appear on the page. Facebook is working on that. Maybe it will enable us to better regulate our moods, or maybe when it's a bit more advanced, it will give us a direct interface with ChatGPT and essentially make us super smart, linking our brains directly to the web. I don't expect to see that next year, but maybe 5 years, 10, who knows? The point is, a whole generation of smart caps is coming, and the question for all of us will soon be, are we ready to become cyborgs? Cyborg is short for cybernetic organism, a being that combines biological and technological components.
Elon Musk says we're already cyborgs, and when you think about it, he's right. We have a brain-computer interface with our phones, but it's very slow, requiring us to use our eyes, our voice, and our fingers. Our new smart helmets will just make the connection much faster and more capable. Dan and I met shortly after the New York Times published this story in 2021. The piece focused on scientists and engineers in AI who consider themselves to be working not only in the technological realm, but in the realm of religion as well. The story mentioned a Seattle-based organization called AI and Faith, which sounds a lot like a form of Unitarian Universalism for the modern age. It explores the intersection of AI and all of the major faith traditions, generating conversations among AI researchers and theologians, ethicists, and religious leaders. We both promptly connected with David Brenner, AI and Faith's founder and board chair, and volunteered to help.
AI is impacting our world in remarkable ways. We've seen this especially in the last 6 months with the rise of ChatGPT 3 and now 4 and similar kinds of large language models and their interface. But even before now, we've had all kinds of different technologies driven by the power of AI, machine learning, neural networks, this sophisticated analysis of data, and a learning capability that is driving many parts of our engagement as consumers and as just out in the world in all sorts of ways. So it's a conversation that has been there for 20 years, but boy, has it sped up in these last 6 months. It's an important conversation for people of faith. Our organization, AI and Faith, is creating a channel into the ethics debate over AI and its uptake and use. And we have believed since our inception 6 years ago that it was essential that faith communities participate in this broader conversation.
We produced this video to extend to all UU congregations an invitation to join the AI conversation on Sunday, October 22nd this year. That's the day before Ayudha Puja, a festival in the Hindu calendar that set aside for honoring one's tools, instruments, and machines. That strikes us as just the right time to reflect on our relationships with our machines and especially AI.
So Ayudha Puja is actually a wonderful example of something that I've just kind of come to see as operational in human life. When I first witnessed Ayudha Puja, I thought, gosh, you see religion, you see science, you see technology, they're all like right there happening at the same time. Even with sometimes practitioners saying, the same practitioners would say, no, religion and science have nothing to do with each other. And then they come to this religious festival in their laboratory, right? But now what I'm seeing about Ayudha Puja is it does something explicit that we're actually all mostly doing all the time implicitly anyway. that religion, science, and technology, I've come to start thinking of them as a three-headed hydra. I need a new tattoo. Three-headed hydra. That religion, science, and technology, they're all kind of connected, and you get these hydras. You might get an artificial intelligence hydra, or a climate hydra, or a physics hydra, and they kind of bumble around in our culture. And sometimes those heads are really well aligned, and the vision is clear. And sometimes they disagree with one another. You know, you think about kind of these myths of multi-headed monsters not agreeing, and one head wants to go this way and one head wants to go that way. And so they're in argument, right? But I think religion, science, technology are like that. They're just tied in our culture. And when we're explicit, as in Ayudha Puja, I actually think that's valuable. I think Ayudha Puja sets a good example for how we can comfortably come to a place where people of different beliefs and different roles are all in the same room, recognizing that, at least for this moment, there's a forward-looking vision. Right? That in Ayudha Puja in particular, it's a vision of gratitude, and it's a vision of kind of good fortune for the year to come, right? Like, thank you to my tools because they make my living possible, and let's keep up the good work as we move forward. So, and I think it's easier to have that combination when you're really explicit about what you're doing. And when you're hiding some of it, when you're burying something, then it becomes really hard to get to that place intellectually, and emotionally. So I think it's a great example for us about how we might, take seriously all the forms of world building, all the forms of meaning making, right? Because that's so essentially human. How do we make meaning out of a world that does not tell us what it means? The world around us runs the risk of looking utterly meaningless because it's not telling us what it means. It's not doing that work for us. And so we have to engage with the world and see how meaning, how human life has meaning, perhaps how the entire global ecosystem has meaning. How are those things? How's history, our place in cosmic history? How does it have meaning? All of that's so important to human beings because it helps us operate in the world around us. And I think if we take seriously that religion, science, and technology are all parts of that process, that we probably do a little bit better job of aiming ourselves toward outcomes that make sense.
Each September at UU Saratoga, we open the liturgical year with our water communion. It's a very nice tradition, with all of us bringing water from places that have special meaning for us and pooling them all together. Each June, we end the year with our flower communion, with all of us bringing a favorite flower. Many UU congregations have these traditions. Yours may too. So how about a new tradition? How about we celebrate an age-old festival and dedicate one Sunday each October to exploring our relationships with our machines, and especially our relationships with AI?
Ayudha Puja makes sense. I mean, I've talked to, about it with American engineers, people who work on things like for example, one guy was works on helicopter engines for Boeing or something. And I talked to him about this and he was like, man, that makes perfect sense. It makes sense that you have a day where you're just kind of grateful that stuff works, that the machines do the things you're looking for, and that you look forward to a year ahead of you that you're going to keep collaborating with your machines to make things work. For him, it made perfect sense. Guy's not Hindu. I don't even think he was explicitly religious in any fashion, unless you count engineering as a religion, which I don't want to rule out. But for him and other engineers that I've talked to, it makes sense to think that way. And so, because we do fundamentally want the world to be meaningful, and we want our own actions to be meaningful within the world. I mean, you look at the kind of anomie that can happen in public life when people feel like they're not contributing to the world around them. Right? Like they have nothing to offer, that then it becomes, like kind of all of order breaks down for them in their lives, and then it can break down publicly, right? We want order, but we want that order to emerge out of our own meaningful contribution to the people around us. And so we got to think about, like, how do we use the machines and, that are around us to do that work, right? To help us be better at it. The John Markoff, who was a New York Times reporter for a long time on science and technology, and he wrote a very nice book called Machines of Loving Grace. And he talks about, well, there's artificial intelligence, but a lot of the time people are just worried about how to replace human beings with machines. And then there's intelligence augmentation. And that's about how do we take machines to elevate what we do. And I think he makes a lot of sense in that position. And I actually think that Ayudha Puja is sort of this wonderful little ritual way for that to kind of unfold. Like, how does the machine help me do the thing better than I'm doing it now, right? Elevate me to that next kind of step.